Hi, in this video I'll show you how to put together the Creepy Clown, which is a little luminary from Simply Crafty SVGs. And I just kind of start right in, and you can see these are pieces for the head piece. So we have the front, and then there's a little border piece. I'll explain what that's for. And then the back with a little border piece and another piece for the flap opening for the battery operated tea light. And this is the little flap we'll attach. And these are the sides of the head. And I'll explain that when we get to the actual head assembly. So I like to start right in if you watch my videos. So here I have the nose. So I like to get a lot of little fiddly things out of the way, although there's a lot of fiddly things with this, not fiddly, but there's a lot of little things to do with this box. There's no like real simple, but it's not real hard either if you follow the instructions. So you can see I'm just folding on all the score lines. And I use currently use primarily a Sizzix E-clips. So it kind of does a little kiss cut. Makes it easier to fold. So if you're using something like a Cricut Maker, Cricut Air, you might want to use the dash lines and cut them. It'll be easier to fold on the score lines. So we're going to start. We're just going to go ahead and you can see I'm just gluing these tabs on the inside of the adjacent edge. If you've ever done any rounded designs before, we're just gluing that tab to the inside, and you're just matching up that right edge to the tab fold. And I'm going to go from the bottom to the top because the bottom is connected. So a lot of times I have just separate pieces that are not connected, and usually you can put those from top to bottom or bottom to top. So they're really small tabs, so I'm using my little fine tip applicator from Darius. And there's a link in the video or on the product page showing what kind of glue bottle I use. And for this, in that glue bottle, I actually use art glitter glue. You can see I'm just going through it one tab at a time and holding it until it's secure before I go to the next one. The other glues you'll see me use, or the glue I should say, is Scotch Quick Dry, and I like to use that for a little bit larger pieces, but really the fine pieces I use the art glitter glue. I may transition completely to art glitter glue, but at this point I use a combination of the two. I like them for different purposes. If I want a bigger flow, I'll use the other one, and I could do that with art glitter glue in the regular bottle, but I have a lot of Scotch Quick Dry still, so they just dry a little bit differently. But I used to be one of those people who didn't like the art glitter glue, and after using it for a while, I like it a lot. A little bit goes a long ways. Even the amount I'm putting on these tabs is probably a little bit overkill. And that's why I use a little fine tip applicator. Otherwise I overdo it. So when you're trying to close this up, it's so small, but what will help you is if you can try to get that bottom one attached and then the top one. So we're doing the hard assembly first. Get it out of the way. The other stuff's not hard, it just takes time. So, and I'm just wiping away the excess glue, but I kind of feel with my finger to make sure that that tab fold is matched up to the other edge. Then I'm going to apply in pressure with my other finger against the tab on the inside. So the flap on the back, that'll be the part that attaches to the face. So we're just going to add glue to these little tabs. I had it coming apart there, so I wanted to fix that. So make sure it's good and dry before you start doing that. I wanted to show you so I'm kind of flipping it in again. And then if you do something like I do, I have glue on my fingertips. You want to kind of wipe that off before you move forward. So have a little wet paper towel that I can wipe my fingers off and any leakage. Fortunately, I wasn't too worried about the back of this because I'm going to be inking the edges with black to give it a creepy feel. But you can see I'm just kind of lining it up and then applying pressure against the tabs to get that closed. And we'll do similar on the front, but the difference is that it's not attached. I just didn't want two flaps in your way when you were trying to put together the nose. So you can also reach in with a little tool like that was a wooden chopstick. So free if you go and order Chinese food. So normally with these kind of openings I'll anchor one side, but since they're so small flaps, I'm just going to add glue to all of them and then carefully match it up. So I'm just trying to center it, and I'm applying like a little bit of force. You don't want to push too hard because the flaps go in, but since it's so small, you just go around the edge and then just rub it a little bit, and then you can always go ahead and flip it over and apply pressure against the table too, if you need to. And I'm just going to go around the edges. This is twofold. It kind of gives it more of a creepy nose, like a kind of dirty nose. It's up to you what you want to do with your nose, obviously, but I wanted to give it kind of a creepy feel. So I was just putting that around the edges, and also if there's a little bit of glue leakage, it kind of hides that, so it's kind of nice. So we'll put that aside for now, and we'll work on the face. So we're going to put some of the facial elements on before we put the box together. Make it easier, because everything's easier flat, and you can see how those eyes go. So the way we're going to layer this, we're going to put the vellum on the inside because you can't see the inside of the box. Now with this design, I didn't put vellum around the little holes in the head. I thought it would be better open. So if for some reason you wanted to, you could always just do a custom size in your software and cover that with a vellum, if that's something you want to do. I thought it looked better without it, but it's easy enough to create a little circle or square that you could add up there to cover it. So you just want to be careful that you don't get glue too close to the edge of the eyes. So this is going to go on the inside, and it's as wide as I could make it without just in case you wanted to layer it on the front. I didn't want it to be any wider. So basically you could add glue. What I would recommend for this, if you're using black, and that's black vellum, believe it or not. If you don't have black vellum, you could always print it with printable vellum, but you could always add glue to the back and then line it up that way too. So if you don't have, there's printable vellums and already pre-printed. That was a pre-printed one. But you could also take a clear vellum and add ink to it. Like just ink it and kind of give it a glow. So just giving you ideas if you do want it. You don't have black or a printable, obviously. So here you see it's going to line up with the eye opening. So I'm just going to do a light glue coating on the back, and I'm trying to stay away from the edges so it gives me a little bit of leeway so I don't get any glue in that vellum part, in the eye parts. And when I move it around, it gives me just a little bit wiggle room. So if I do have to rotate it a little bit, you won't see the glue on the actual face either. And that's some stuff I had from my stash. It's like a metallic, it's like a sheen, blue, like a blue sheen cardstock. It was thick. I can't even remember how many years ago I got it, but I saw it and I'm like, oh, that would be fun. So I went with it. I have so much stash from over the years of scrapbooking. Prior to doing this, I used to scrapbook a lot. We're going to go ahead and, again, don't put the glue too close to the edges because you don't want it leaking onto the other piece on the edge. So I usually, when I place it down, I'm getting as close as the opening as possible and then lining it up on the right and left. See, it lines up on that right piece perfectly over that middle. And the same thing on the other side. So the key here with glue, and I got a little bit too close to the edge, is just not getting glue too close to the edge. So if you don't place it exactly where it needs to go, you have a little wiggle room and you won't get glue everywhere. That's one of the reasons I use a fine tip applicator. And here are the eyes. They should fit perfectly in there. When you slide them in, you could use like a little foam tape to pop them up too. I think red eyes would look good too. But it kind of fits right in that little section there. And then, so you just put a little dot of glue on each. And then it should fit in there. I just had, it was a user error. I didn't get fit in there. I've done a couple of these already, so it fits in fine. But if it doesn't, it's not a big deal. It'll kind of just sit up a little bit. Just had to adjust it. And I want to be careful adjusting that because I'm gluing on vellum and I have a hole in the middle of that eye. So you don't want to see the glue in the middle of that eye or anywhere really. Because once you get glue on vellum, it's just a shiny mess. But fortunately, I didn't get much. I was careful about pulling it up. So now these teeth go underneath the, you can call it the lips or the mouth, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, what do you call it? Well, it would be the mouth, the clown mouth. But those aren't really, I guess they're lips. Clown makeup. So when you put this, I'm just putting a fine line of glue around the edge. That opening should be the opening exactly where the teeth are. So you want to kind of put it on lightly and then kind of arrange it around until you get it in place. If it's not perfect, that's okay. And the white is a little bit smaller on the edge than the red. I just didn't want it sticking out the side. But to help that, if for some reason you do get it too close to the side, you can go ahead. This is just that color box chalk ink that I use, the charcoal. I'm just inking the edges there. And then it makes that white not show. So when you glue this on now, we're going to line it up again. You're going to see the opening where the teeth are. You're going to line it up with that opening. So this time, I need to clean off my glue tip here. This time I'm going to add glue here. So this is, if you're somebody who drops things a lot, which I am, it's better to put the glue on the item that you're gluing onto rather than down. But if you wanted to add some glue to the back of the teeth, you could too. I chose not to. But I'm going to kind of do a little filler here, just a really light edge around here. And the reason is that I don't know if I glued well enough on to cover that whole thing. I want it flat. So I'm going to start from the bottom and try to line it up from the bottom. And then you can kind of see through it. If you can lift it up, you can't see it in this picture, but if you could lift it up to the light that you're working with black vellum, you'll see whether you're lined up or not before you apply pressure. I know that didn't sound right, but so that's the face minus the nose. So now we'll get the sides. We're going to start putting the head together. And this piece with the holes, that's the bottom. So that's where the bottom chin part will go. So be careful because these, I'm going to show you how to put this together. So you're just going to glue these with the tabs. But this is the top, and go ahead and fold it like you see here. And you can see that's the shape of it. The biggest thing here is to pay attention to the tabs, and I'll explain as we go along. The reason is one side you need to put the front, and one side you need to put the back, and it all has to do with the openings on the front of the face. And I'm trying a different method of putting together boxes like this. So you can see I'm just, after I glue that first tab, I'm folding that to a flat surface down, and then I'm going to add glue to this tab, and then glue it on the inside of the other edge, lining up that edge to the tab fold. So it's creating the outline of the head. I'll flip it around so that The holes are at the bottom, so for the chin. We're going to go ahead and grab the pieces here. So we have these little edge pieces. I've never done this before, so it's something new. One has kind of a flip up on the top, so those pieces right there, that's for this, so it clears those openings right here. And then the other one will be for the back, so that'll be for the back of the head. So we don't have to account for the opening, other than that big opening in the back for the battery operated candle. Okay, what you will notice that there's two different size tabs. The tabs are slightly different on each side. So on this side you have these top ones that are kind of angled down, and those are angled so when we put this top border on, it'll clear them and you won't see them. So that's so we don't see the tabs when we put the top face part on. And this other side, all the tabs are uniformly sized. So the front, if they're not uniform, that's the front. On the back, they're uniform, so that's the back of it. And we're going to put the back piece on first. So I have it flipped over so all the uniform tabs are against the table, and I'm adding glue to that bottom tab with the opening, the hole. So that's where the chin goes. So you'll see it in a minute. I know my hands are in the way, but I'm matching up the bottom of the chin piece on that little border piece up to the inside tab edge of that bottom piece. And I'm making sure it's lined up. And it's in a view I can see. And you can see it's lined up here. So that's what it looks like. So I've never done this before, but it was helpful with this type of box, closed box. I'm going to glue all these tabs around the to these little border piece, which will create a larger area for us to attach the back panel, and we'll do the same on the front. So you can either reach in, so you just want to, if you're going to reach in, you want to make sure all the tabs are folded in and flattened against the table. And if you've seen this method before, what we're going to do is line up the panel edge to each section, starting at the place we first anchored. So we're going to start at the chin and add a glue to a few tabs up to the next tab on the right there. We're just going to carefully line that up. So I just have to get this in. So make sure you get this in. It's kind of hard to do it. Get it down first before you start doing it. And then I'm just kind of folding in, just pushing in each of the side tabs as I go around and apply pressure. So the biggest thing is making sure that that edge meets the inside, the edge of that like border panel meets the inside edge of that fold. And you can see here you can also apply pressure this way. So there's multiple ways to glue this, but you can see you just have to be careful and make sure that that little border panel meets up with the inside tab edge, or fold I should say. So here's a different way of doing it. So you can try both methods, see if which one works better for you. Always do that because everybody's different. So you can see I'm doing one by one in order, but I'm pushing in, or it's like out, but I'm pushing in the border panel into the inside tab fold as I fold over each tab and apply pressure. And then you can go ahead and apply pressure against the table like this. So we'll continue to do the same thing around the remaining edge until it's glued on. So I'm not going to show you all the details, but it's the same process. Just keep on gluing it around. And I would just recommend just going one way. Don't go from the other side. Once you start one way, just continue it. So this is what it looks like glued on. And this will allow us just to glue on that top panel to that solid edge. But we need to add the front one now. So now the front one with those little curved out notches at the top, we're going to do the same thing, and the nice thing is that we can reach in and do almost the same exact process as we did the other side. So if you've ever done boxes like this, this is usually the challenge. A lot of times if it's smaller, I'll just have you fold it over and match it up the sides, but this one was not as easy as most, so I wanted to try to make it a little easier, so I'm trying this idea. I like it. I hope others do too. So you can see we anchored the piece again on that bottom chin part. Then we're flipping out all these tabs to be able to place it inside, so we can glue the tabs just like we did the back part. So this is going a little quicker, but you can see that they'll fold over, and they get close. You know, for this border part, some people might think initially, well, some of your tabs kind of can be seen over the edge. Well, it's not a big deal. All of this is a structural help to help you put it together a little bit easier, because if it won't show through any of the openings. The way I designed it, it's just not going to show. So you're just going to continue whatever method you use, whether you add glue to a couple tabs and then do it by hand that way, or you add glue to the tabs and do it against the table. Either way, that's up to you. Just make sure you go one direction. So I started one side, I just keep on going around, and that just helps things not get off kilter. If you start on one side and then continue on the other, sometimes it gets a little off kilter. This way it kind of gets it in place. Do you see I'm just using the table to apply pressure once I get all the tabs attached. So I'm just showing this for those that want to see a whole side attached. This gets it ready to put the back and front on. And there is the edge, the structure ready to go. So this is how the front's going to go on. You can see that those tabs don't interfere at all with that opening on the top of the head. And the back, because remember which way you have to put the back. So the back is uniform around the edge where the front is not. But first let's go ahead and put this little flap. So we're just going to fold that flap and then slide it in and glue it underneath. You're going to match up that top edge to the inside tab fold there, so it flips up. This is a real simple mechanism. I didn't want to go real fancy with it. All it is to be able to keep it shut, just to open it easily, to add a tea light, to fold it up, and then fold it down. So there's nothing real fancy about this. So we're going ahead and lining up that tab. Make sure that tab fold doesn't get glued underneath, so it folds up still, so you could always fold it up before the glue dries, and then it'll just flip in like that. And so you just flip it out when you need to add a tea light. Just go right there. So see, it just flips up that way. It's the simplest of simple, but it works. You see it fits right in there, and the little taller ones, the ones that are a little bit taller, also fit. So this one, just make sure you're putting it in the correct side. So you might want to do the front first, but I did the back first in this video. We're going to go ahead and add a liberal amount of glue around this edge. And I'm doing it on the inside too, because I want to really make sure it doesn't flip up on the edge. The reason I said do the front first, and yeah, sure, I could edit the video, but if you're listening to this, either way, it's fine. You have the ability to reach in and apply pressure for the first panel you add, so that's up to you which one you want to do. Sometimes when I'm doing the video, I think about it after the fact, But I do try to make several versions before I do the video, so I put in the right order. Sometimes I figure that the reason it takes me so long is because I'm so worried that somebody's going to get stuck on something. So, but you see I can reach in. So if you wanted to do the front first and have that be the one that you can reach in, apply pressure, that's understandable. If I were to do it again, I'd do the front first and then the back second. Because we don't really care if it's a little bit imperfect on the back. You probably want it to, the showpiece is the front. But regardless, sure, you're going to see the edges a little bit. But with this one, that's why I like chalking so much. So if people wondered like why I ink everything on the edges, it's such a twofold. It kind of gives it a fun effect, but it also hides some imperfections when necessary. I'm not saying there's any mistakes in crafting, but the reality is we all have like little things we do on any project we do, and it doesn't look perfect. Well, the nice thing about inking and all that stuff, even with cards, I'm going to stop, but it hides a lot of things. So here you want to line up. I do it from the top of the head first, because you want to make sure you can't see, you don't get it off kilter. So I'm lightly placing it on there and getting it in place. And the glue is wet enough for me to maneuver it. So I'm kind of reaching around to make sure it's matched up on the sides. And then I just had a little bit of glue leakage, so I'm just kind of cleaning up any glue leakage on the sides. And then applying pressure. So this is the nice part about having this this little border that I put on the inside, is that it gave us more space to glue that front panel without interfering with all the openings. So it might be something that I use on future designs like this, but I don't do a lot of boxes like this. So, but it was helpful for me, so I hope it's helpful for others. So going back to the inking, I see I get back and forth. I like these little cat's eye inks pads. I mean, I do like the distress inks that I use periodically, but this one I can handle so much easier and get it into areas that are, you know, angles that are easier for me, and I've used them for a long time. So again, I think they're inking generally, even if you use like a little applicator with distress ink or distress oxide, it kind of gives it a cool effect, but also the dual benefit of hiding glue edges and stuff like that. So kind of fun. So you can see I'm kind of just trying to figure out, I'm just kind of getting a little haze around the head before I put that hair on. Well, of course we have to assemble the hair, but I just kind of want to get it all ready. So there it is. So we're going to move on to just grabbing, we're going to move on to the hair, but first I want to just add little stickles. It's diamond stickles, which is the clear stickles. And I'm going to kind of glitter up those eyes a little bit. So I just lightly apply it. What's nice with stickles is you kind of apply it and then you can kind of move it around with the tip. So I don't always, I put like a little amount out, and then I kind of move it around to even it out with the tip. So during the day, you have a little, like, the eyes stick out. Those would be cool red, though. And then the nose. And so when I put the nose on, I just kind of try to determine which is the best side on the top and the sides and make sure they're showing. So I'm kind of rotating to see which way it should go. Put glue a little right in the middle. And you can also mark on it with the pencil where you want the nose, but I kind of did it freeform. So it's a little crooked, but you know, a little crooked nose for a creepy clown is appropriate, right? Now we can just set that aside to dry, and then we'll move on to the hair. So there'll be two hair pieces, and you can see one's the left, one's the right. And there'll be 6 panels like this. Only 2 of those kind of border panels that we used earlier. So I'm going to take 2 of the solid panels and put them aside for the front or the back. This is really interchangeable. That's up to you, whichever side you want to use. I'm going to show you how to fold these. I'm going to go get a sample hair piece that I put together, because it does make a difference how you fold them to get them prepped for assembly. So this is the left side of the hair, the way you're looking at it. And you see there's a sharp end, kind of a pointy end on the top. So it's showing this is the bottom piece. So you see that curve on the bottom of the hair? This is the curve. So we're going to want to do valley folds. So that's the natural bend is a mountain fold, folding down. But we want to pre-fold it in so it's easier for us to assemble. And if you get nice crisp folds, it helps as well. So here are the longer sides, which are the top. So I've already folded the other one. You can see it's kind of like hilly. So every third panel folds in a valley fold. The other ones are mountain folds. So we're going to do that with the second one. So I've already folded all these side tabs and kind of pre-folded it before this. So we're going to count 3 and then fold it upwards and get a nice crisp bend there. And be careful. Some paper will kind of fray a little bit when you do that. So now you can see it's all folded for the little 3 humps of the hair. That sounds kind of strange, huh? So you can see that corresponds to the pointy end. So that little circle that's cut out tells me that that end is where the pointy side of the panel is going to be glued on. So that's where you can see that we have the corresponding, the little piece has 2 holes cut into the side tabs. So we know that matches up to that end. Because all those little panels are sized differently, so if you don't glue it on right, then the panels won't go on right. So we're just going to line up this edge to the tab fold. Just applying pressure, getting it good and secure. And you can see it folds inward, and then that top piece. So the bottom piece is going to be probably the harder with the folding up. Then we're going to use that panel piece for the border panel piece will be for the front. So we're just going to focus on gluing this solid piece to the back. Again, they're interchangeable, so if you find you like what the back looks like better than the front, it doesn't matter, you can flip it around. But there's a reason why I did it this way. So you can see that pointy part, you have to have it situated right. So the bottom piece of the panel is lined up with those 3 panels for the side. So you see how that's going to line up there in that corner. So we're going to add glue to the one piece with the hole in it. And we're going to carefully, this is a little bit strange to get this glued on, but what we're trying to do is line that up and get it anchored to that one tab. When I'm doing this video, sometimes with this piece, I get my hands move around a lot, so hopefully you can see this. So once I want to make sure it's good and anchored, so I just flipped it over and applied pressure against the table. And then I'm just going to clean that off with my little wet paper towel. And you could start at the edge too. You don't have to start on that one. I just want to make a point that you know that pointy part lines up to that tab. And if you do it that way, you won't make a mistake. And making sure that the 3 sections are situated so they line up with this bottom piece. So I am adding just a little bit too much glue, but I know I can just carefully wipe it off. So I'm just lining up those other tabs to glue to the inside, lining up those edges. and just applying pressure, because as we fold it the other way, we're going to put pressure on the existing tabs that we just glued. So you just want to make sure it's good and dry. So you see, I'm just going to show you the front. So you see that glues that way. So whichever way you're going to want one piece. The pieces are different. They're opposite because they're different side of the head, but they glue together the same. So you can see that's going to glue onto the inside here. So this is when you get to these the sharp corner edges, they're just harder to reach your fingers in. So if you had little tools that you use to apply pressure, like the wooden chopstick is one of my go-tos, this is when you'd use it. And I wouldn't put a lot of glue on a lot of tabs at this point, because you're going to want to focus on these on these first tabs around this edge. Again, this is always the hardest part because it's your reach. You can't reach in as far. But right now what's nice is that I can reach in from the other end. So you see I'm lining up that edge, panel edge, to the tab fold. Then I'm going to go ahead and apply additional pressure, but I could also reach in too. I just wanted to get into that corner. And you see I was a little bit off there on that last tab. So I'm folding it. You see how I folded that side panel up? You can do that. I mean, you can do whatever you need to do to get that panel out of your way so you can add glue. It's not completely difficult. This just requires attention. Especially since you have a mix of valley and mountain folds here. Folds that go inward and up. So there's other ways you could glue this on. I mean, you could just glue the complete edge and then just match it up. It's harder. But if you're familiar with this, of course, do it any way that you want to do it. I do focus on people that may not do a lot of 3D crafts. So when I assemble these, I keep that in mind, that it could be a challenge for many people. I'm not always successful, but not everything's easy with 3D. So it is something that the more you do it, the better you get. So that's why I offer so many freebies, is to give you a little bit more practice. And even I have some curved freebies, like I think the pumpkin box is one of them, just offhand. But you see, we're just going to continue going around and carefully, tab by tab, lining up the tab fold to the panel edge, and then applying pressure, and then continuing to glue the remaining tabs on the inside. Again, remember it's open on the other side right now, so, and I'm folding that tab in because we'll glue that to the inside last. And somebody may say, well, this is not the easiest. I could do this. Well, I do this different ways. Again, I try it different methods. I think I put together at least 3 in different ways just to see which one might be a little bit easy for the masses. But again, if you're versed at doing this kind of stuff, maybe you have a better way. I mean, you can always email me too and say, hey, a better way would have been this, XYZ, whatever. Or on our Facebook, we have a group as well. If you haven't checked it out, we have a Facebook group. There's a link in under groups on our page that you can find it. And I think I have an announcement there too. So you can't see it, but I'm kind of reaching in and adding glue to that last tab on the end, and then just matching it up. So right there. So it was that last inside. So you could just reach in and get there. So that's one side. So the other side, because we want it matched up a little bit better, we're going to use the same method as we used on the head. It just helps us match up that last panel a little bit better. And if you don't want to use this piece, that's fine, but you can see it fits in like that. It's going to. But it allows us to kind of reach in and apply pressure underneath the edge of that panel too as we glue the tabs. So we can get it in place a little bit better. At least I found it easier, and I've done a lot of these boxes. Especially with shapes like this, with the edges that kind of, I mean, fortunately I didn't do just pure circular. These sharp edges help. So I'm trying to line this up, but I'm just having a hard time getting it in place. So you can see that this is normal for everybody, not just for somebody who does it for a living. I get it, I do this all the time, but it's still hard for me. I have to pay attention. If it were easy, a lot more people would do 3D. 3D designs. So what I'm doing is lining that up. I'm getting it just anchored like I did the big piece. The difference is it has a hole in it. So I anchored it underneath, and you can see it's kind of flimsy. But I'm kind of flipping it over. It's just the angle I had it in, but you can see it's anchored on, just like the other piece. So you'll be able to get your fingers in underneath here most of the time, but if you need to get some pressure underneath it, you could use a tool. But from an angle, I was pretty much able to get my fingers underneath the entire border after I got most of it glued. So we want to fold back these tabs before we add the glue to them. And we don't care if we get a whole lot of any glue on the top of that border, because we're going to be adding a panel on top of that. So to make it easier for this one, I always say go in order, but for this one, anchoring that middle piece, so one of that top piece, helps to glue the rest of it. So whatever works for you, you can give it a try. You do the first one, you said, oh, that didn't work very well. You can try something different, but you can see I'm reaching in, and as I'm folding them over, I'm applying pressure from both sides. And that's the benefit of having this little border piece. Normally with this kind of shape, as I explained earlier, I would just line up the panel carefully, like the solid panel on top of all these tabs. But this way it gives me a good place to glue things to. So it gives me a solid edge that I can glue the final panel. And it makes those folds a little bit better and crisper on the edge, so they're not as visible. And the reason I did it this way too, the last reason, is that I like to emboss things. So I could have embossed the other one before I glued it on too, but I like to emboss panels, so I wanted to emboss the front panel with something fun. So this way I can emboss it and it won't affect how I glue, because when you emboss glue items or panels, it's really hard because of the raised, how it is raised in some places and not raised in other. So it's hard for the glue to adhere to flat surfaces, or not even to tabs. I mean, it's harder to maneuver in some instances. It depends on the paper. But also just generally this made it easier for me. So I just went around one final time and made sure that they were all secure. Then I can go ahead and just glue this to the top, similar to how we glued the head pieces on, the solid head pieces. Again, get a good amount of glue around the edges and then towards the middle. And then you're just going to line it up. And I'm only showing you one of the two pieces, so the other one will go together the same way. The only difference is it's just the opposite of this one. So just put aside one set. Just do one set at a time. Just get one set and then do the other set. So each set will have a border one and then two different facing ones to make the front and back. So I'm just going around the edges, making sure it's lined up, and then applying pressure. And then do that long enough that is required for your glue to dry. And then it'll attach to the side of the head. So this one, you can see the point is always going to be towards the top of the head, and I have the embossing on the front of that one. So, and I like to do a little inking. So I had already pre-inked the emboss panel, but now I just wanted to go around the edges, or whatever you prefer. I just did that again for more eerie feel. So now we just have to put together the base, and the sole purpose is to really stabilize and hold up the clown head. So I know it's kind of hard to see, so hopefully zooming in a little bit helps. So we're just going to attach those two side pieces using one of the bottom side tab. So we're lining up that left edge to the right tab fold, and you can see you just want to make sure it's lined up. So the only other pieces we have are the top and bottom. So now in between here we have tabs in between that will just go ahead and slide in and under, and we're lining up those tab folds with the edge again. So we'll continue around the bottom doing that for all the other tabs. So just reaching in. So those tabs are going to fold under. Again, I know the lighting's not the best with black. The one thing I don't like doing tutorials with black paper, I try to turn it around so you can see. But it's basically the same as gluing other edges. We're bypassing the one that we've already glued to glue the two pieces together. And then you can see I'm just folding over. I'm just matching up that tab and that bottom section. And then making sure it's good and secure before I go to the next one. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten impatient. And not with this one, with all designs, and didn't wait long enough and went to the next tab and pulled the previous tab off. And then to close it up, we have two tabs on the side here. I'm just doing the bottom tab first. Then I'll reach in and do the top. You could have added glue to both of them, but the bottom tab is a vertical, so it's easier to match up where this is angled. So once we get that vertical piece attached, that's easier for us to line up that top one. But it is for me, at least. Then I was trying to move it around in the light a little bit so you could see it. And then I had one final piece to glue, the other side, which I hadn't done yet. And if you want to watch this video before you actually make this, it might be a good idea. Then you can see what the shape is. It's basically a hexagon-ish type on the bottom, but it's really not a hexagon. The top has to be rectangular because it matches the same as the bottom of the head, so it'll attach. So the lengthwise is from the front to the back. It's longer from front to the back, and then that fold, see the little fold in the front? That's going to be in the front and the back, and the sides will be straight when you attach it. So I'm adding glue to the tabs of the top piece inside, and the reason I'm doing that is because we're going to glue that head to that top piece, so we don't care if the tabs show. And it kind of helps line it up, and you can reach in and apply pressure. I mean, before you really apply pressure, you can go ahead and adjust it on the top. Because of the way this particular bottom piece is put together, there's a fold in the front and back, so it may not line up like it normally would with a regular square or rectangular opening, but enough to be able to attach that tab. You just have to adjust it a little bit. Again, I know this is not the best lighting. I'm getting better with the video lighting and all that, but this one for some reason has some difficulty, so just try to angle it a little bit, move it around. But you see that that wasn't really lined up. So the tabs are on top. Then we'll go ahead and attach the bottom piece. So I'm taking the piece that's flat on the sides and attaching that panel on that side. So they're different sizes, but you can see the panels kind of juts out in the front and back. So we're going to attach that, and I like to just fold down that tab backwards so I can get some pressure against the table. And then I'll add glue to all the remaining tabs. I'm going to get my Scotch Quick Dry glue to get a little bit more flow, glue flow. That little fine tip applicator takes a lot of pressure to squeeze out the glue sometimes, so I like to use it appropriately. So I'm kind of getting it nice and wet. I mean, I may have put a little overkill on that, but I'm just going to fold it over, and we'll line up the edges closer to the fold, so the sides. So I'll do that right side. I'm just matching up that panel edge to the edge of the other piece. And again, you can see I'm just working my way to the other side. And if you need to, you can kind of squish the box a little bit if you need to, but it doesn't have to be perfect. This really is just a functional piece. There's nothing decorative because the large collar, the folded collar, will completely cover this. I mean, it still is a box, but so I just flipped it over and applied pressure against those tabs that are already rubbed around the edges. And hopefully you can see it a little bit better. So you have to make sure the pointy part's on the front, so you'll see that flips in like that. And when we attach this, or when we get to that point, you can glue it right there. So you want to make sure that the pointy part's on the front and back, just like that, as you can see from the top. It's shorter width-wise, that little base. So I already folded the left piece. There's two pieces to make that large collar. So what I would say is pre-fold all the individual scored marks. Valley fold, just kind of go around like this. So you'll do the same thing in both pieces. And then I'm going to go right in the middle of this piece. So that's right in the front of that square opening. I'm folding a valley fold, and then you'll see I'm basically accordioning it, going back and forth. Some are valley, some are mountain folds. And because this is a pattern paper, I'm getting that white in the creases, so I'm going to end up inking it to hide that. I mean, it looks good with the white too, but I just wanted to stay with the theme of what I already had on it. So that's how I fold the other one. So we'll attach them, the two pieces. There's this little tab, and there's a fold there, so you can see the tab. We're going to line that up, that left edge to the right tab fold. You want to make sure it lines up really well, and then just apply some good pressure to it. And then what's nice with this is that we'll be able to fold it to get a little bit more pressure. So we're going to fold it up, and then we can just apply a little bit more pressure to it. Just make sure if any glue leaked, just kind of might want to wipe it off so it doesn't glue together. I had some glue on my thing too. So I'm going to actually close this up before I put the head on, but you could try to close this up after you put the head on. So this is really your prerogative. I tried both ways. Nothing's really that simple with this piece. So this is the part where it's funny, the whole box. This is the part that kind of frustrated me a little bit on the assembly and trying to figure it out. There's other things I could have done to make it a little bit easier, but assembly would have been a little bit more. So I ended up with this design. So I just inking all these edges. You can see I'm just kind of folding them up. And the only thing is I wasn't able to ink the innards. I mean, you could do that, but the inner folds are still kind of whitish, but the outside are this little charcoal chalking color. So I just continue to accordion them. And you can do the same thing for the bottom because I wanted to ink the bottom edges a little bit. It just gets a little fiddly in your hands as you're dealing with it. To squish it up again. So the other thing is the reason why it's not as easy to put this on is that because I made the head kind of a square rectangular at the very bottom. Normally these are circular, so I kind of had to make one of these. I forget what these are called, but I had to make it go around. I know there's a name for it. Around a square area rather than circular. So usually I've done those with squares. So we're going to make sure that this is situated correctly. So the flat side should be on the sides of the head and the pointy side should be in the front and back. See, that kind of falls over by itself. So we're going to close it up that way. And you see it's going to go around like that. I'm going to close it up first. I'm going to glue the other side. But again, you could try to put the head on first and then put this on. That is up to you. It would work. It would just be a little bit of a... What I was afraid of when I did that, and I tried to, is as you put it on, it creates stress around the seam of where you glue the head on, so it could pull the head off. So this way it's less likely to affect that adhering of the head to that base, because it's a small area to glue it onto. So we're just gluing it like we did the other side, and then we can just fold it to help adhere it. And once it's glued together, you can see it angles downward, which was the design. So I wanted to rotate it, make sure that those seams are on the sides of the heads. So remember, the sides of the boxes are the straight sides, and the front and back are the ones with the pointy front. So you can see that it's rectangular, longer from front to back. And I'm going to use a portable glue gun for this. You could use regular glue, you just have to hold it longer. I don't use glue guns often, but for this one I will, because what I'm going to do is to stretch that out at the same time that I'm trying to match up that head to that little area. So I just thought it would be easier, but I did hold it for quite a bit. It could still be wobbly. It still is a small attachment, so it's kind of hard to pull it away because I had to flare out that box to help balance the box a little bit. So you can kind of hold it away there. I wasn't very good at this. And then match up that bottom section to line up with the bottom of the head. So I'm just applying pressure. You could do this with regular glue, but if you do it with regular glue, you're going to want to hold it for a good long time. So even with this, I just kept on applying pressure, and then you can kind of hold it sideways. But if you were to pull it off too quickly, it would just topple off. It was the look I was going for, so I had to figure out how to make it work. So that's pretty much the last thing, other than the small collar that we're just going to wrap around. It would be fun to add like a little ornament, like almost like a fun Halloween necklace or something like that around too, rather than use that collar. But so I did this long, and I'm showing you how long I did, and that was hot glue gun. So you can imagine with wet glue, which I did try doing, and of course I have my cap of my glue is off right there, as you can see to the right there. Don't ever do that. Okay, so I did this and I embossed this. This is the small collar, and it just has a cut in the back. I did this on purpose to make it easy to put on. I'm just going to curl these little, I don't know if you could really call them little frilly ruffles, but they're kind of weird off kilter ruffles the way that they're designed. Anyways, I'm just curling them with the round tool like this little round chopstick and just folding them over, curling them down. And just I'm going to go ahead and carefully, you can see it's cut. And you could cut a little piece of, if you don't want it cut in the back, you could always just add a little piece of cardstock and glue it underneath to keep the two together. I did not want to do that. So that my purpose was to make this part easy. So if you can see, I'm going to try to carefully do that, but you want to part them and just kind of wrap it around one side carefully, not putting too much pressure, and then go around the other side. And then you can kind of get it in place. So I'll hide that edge of that large collar. I didn't have it in place yet. And you see that back? It kind of sits in place. So if you're bothered by it, you can go ahead and put a little piece of cardstock underneath to glue the pieces together. That's just a preference. But again, I wanted something a little bit easier with this design, and that's what I selected. So that's it. That's the final design. And you can just go ahead and you can add a battery operated tea light. The short ones that you can get at the dollar stores if you're in the US, like that. And I'm sure you can get them in other countries too. And that just flips under to close. You can get the ones that are a little taller too, they fit in there. And then I actually ended up adding a little bit of glue. Just my glue gun was still hot and just tapped it and got it closer to each other rather than put a little tab underneath there. Hardly anybody's going to see the back. That's it. I just had to get this out of my mind. That's the reason I designed it. I hope some people like it, that like this kind of thing. And I appreciate you watching, and thank you for supporting us.